This is going to be Tails versus Arthur. Arthur, like I said earlier, a player on Slayers, really a very, very solid player, as well as Tails. You know, these tournaments are often so stacked. I think last time I got to cast Revival a bunch of times in a row. We saw DS coming out from Team Spider, who's actually probably the best Terran player that Taiwan has to offer. I mean, casting him was absolutely an honor. Honor Cup, So, definitely a lovely situation. Now, bear with me if I'm getting a little bit drowsy. I was drinking all day. I'm going to be totally honest with you. I was drinking for a while, and then I just took some Tylenol to get rid of this cavity pain. I have some serious cavity pain. Anyway, so this is going to be a PvP on Atlantis spaceship. We have spawning in the bottom, in the southmost spawning position, our blue Protoss Arthur from Team Slayers, and spawning in the eastmost spawning position, of course, Tails, our very own Tails, just a wonderful, wonderful player. So PvP is always an interesting matchup to watch because the mind games that can go on are unbelievable. You know, we have certain builds that have been around for a while, like say a 4-gate, for instance, which will take usually 1 gas if you want to be really offensive, or 2 gases if you want to be, you know, not as quick but get more stalkers out instead of zealots. And based on chrono boost and gas count, both players are thinking about what does my opponent think about exactly what I'm doing, and what can I do to play those mind games to make sure that he isn't actually ready for what I'm preparing for. You know, it's those kinds of mind games that make PvP so interesting. Of course, that makes it a very volatile matchup and a little bit difficult to predict. You know, if one player is going in and saying, I'm going to grab this 1 gas or 2 gases, throw down a robo, cancel it, and then throw down more gateways, we have no idea how that's ever going to come out because that makes something a little bit more delayed. That makes it very, very difficult to see what each player knows about each other. Basically, what you see from your opponent as a Protoss player pretty much defines exactly how you're going to respond. The question is, how does each player decide to respond? Does one player want to take the more offensive route and actually make the decisions in the game? And does one player want to sit back and try to see what their opponent is doing and only respond to it instead of taking that very, very forefront role? You'll see players like MC, instead of taking that offensive role, MC will actually see, you know, oh, is my opponent chrono boosting his Nexus? Then I'll go ahead and do that as well. Oh, my opponent's throwing down a gas? I guess I'll do that. Oh, he's throwing down 2 gases. I can feel safe doing that as well. So, you know, it's really interesting to see which player wants to take that really forefront role. Both players at this point pretty much mirroring each other's builds. One zealot's going to be out slightly before the other, but that's not really going to matter. Now, this is we have to keep an eye on this probe hiding over on the side. If Slayer's Arthur can get a pylon in his opponent's base, that will change how this entire game's going out. That's going to make it very, very viable for Arthur to try to 4-gate, and it looks like he might actually try to do that. He's keeping track of that probe to the best of his ability. You know, he wants to keep that hidden for as long as possible. Tails just now sending out this scout. I don't know. I mean, I think it's a really late scout. I'm a Protoss player, and I always love scouting on mine, even if it's not required. Even if a map allows to scout after your gateway, I'm a huge fan of just trying to get in there as early as possible. You know, if your opponent's trying to, say, throw down a forge and cannon rush you don't want to be in a position where you can't defend against that. Or even if he's trying to proxy 2-gate. It's a really, really terrible position to be in. Or even a 2-gate rush with just pure zealots, not even proxy, just right out of his base. It's something that you really need to be aware of. Here we go. Tails looks like he's gearing up to do this a little bit of a 4-gate. He should be throwing down a couple gateways. At least he's feigning a 4-gate. He only has 2 gates down at this point. He's not even chrono boosting out this his warp gate at this point. It's just sending out that first zealot and stalker, and that's exactly what a 4-gate looks like. If he has a probe out here as well, he's going to be feigning that beautifully. It doesn't look like he's thrown down 2 more gates yet. In fact, this is going to be down a little bit late. So we have just a little bit of an engagement. Tails is throwing down 2 of those pylons. He might actually be committing to this. Arthur, on the other hand, grabbing that Twilight Council, just now finishing up. Here comes the full engagement. Arthur, of course, with the Stalker advantage means that he's going to be way ahead. I don't think Tails is going to let these finish, does he? He lets them finish. He's actually committing to this. That's unbelievable. Meanwhile, Arthur with a probe in his opponent's base, Arthur's actually going to be way ahead. He has a sentry out. He's actually going to be able to get out with this warp gate finishing. He's going to be able to get out another sentry to force field this ramp. In the meantime, his Zealot can tank some damage. Tails behind this expanding. I don't like this at all from Tails. It looks like he is all over the place. He threw down those pylons, and that's going to be a ton of money wasted. Now he's trying to expand, and that's just not something you can do safely in PvP without, having Colossi down first. But it looks like Tails has actually gotten into the base of his opponent. No more sentries have come out, but Slayers is going to be in a nice position to defend against this from here on out. So he'll kill this pylon, and that's going to be it for this aggression, even if there are a couple sentries and a stalker down here. Slayers, Arthur being able to pretty much deny anything from his opponent, and little does Tails know there's already a pylon out here. I don't think Tails has even I don't think he's seen anything to do with this. If we check out his vision, he has no idea that this is coming, and this ramp is just enough out of the way that nothing will happen. So pylon finishes, 3 Zealots warp in. Tails thought he was so safe over at his opponent's base, force fielding it so that his opponent can't get out. Meanwhile, Arthur running right in with his Zealots, going to be able to do a ton of economic damage. Tails just doesn't have anything to deal with this at this point. He threw down his Nexus, which means he is behind in army count. I mean, I would imagine he wants to try to cancel that as Arthur moves across the map in such a good position. He is unbelievably far ahead. Blink is on the way. Once that finishes, that'll really just be the nail on the coffin at this point. If he didn't even have Blink, he'd be far ahead. He'd be able to do everything in his ability to take his opponent out. Of course, that one Zealot's going to go down, and these Stalkers are just wreaking havoc on Tails' base at this point. Of course, they do need to go back so that that can qualify for another warp-in. And with each warp-in, Slayer's Arthur is just getting more and more ahead. Tails pulling probe in some attempt to take out Arthur, but honestly, these Stalkers are going to be able to pull back to make sure that all of these Stalkers down here have vision. Blink finishes the offensive Blink forward, and that's going to be the GG from Tails. So very, very solid play out of Slayer's Arthur. I'd love to see him continue. I'm so sad that Tails actually had to get knocked out at this point. Tails is such a solid player, but just kind of making one mistake after another. His warp gate was slightly delayed from where he wanted to be. He only had 2 gates down at that point. He decided to go for an expansion at the wrong time. I don't know. I'm just kind of underwhelmed with what Tails was doing.